Hey everybody, this is Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back again, ahead of schedule here, because we have finished up a very fun book, Enterprise, by the book. This is by Dean Wesley Smith and Kathryn Rusch. Kristine Kathryn Rusch, let me say that again. And this is actually, I had to look into it just to be sure, but this is only the second Enterprise book that I have read thus far. And it has been actually 2 years now since I've read Christopher L. Bennett's A Choice of Futures. So getting into this one was definitely different and new since I've stuck mostly to TNG Voyager Deep Space Nine for the longest time here now. But I'm very happy with this decision to kind of take it series by series and just keep going that way. I think that's really going to mix it up and bring a lot of variety to the reading, which is really fun. And this book brought a lot of surprises as well, and a very fun coincidence, which I always love when it comes to these things. So let's get right into the cover here. And of course, the cover is a photo cover, which is blah. I mean, blah, blah. But what are you gonna do? In their first few weeks in space, Captain Jonathan Archer and the crew of the Enterprise have already discovered several new species and explored strange new worlds, but each planet brings new discoveries and new dangers. Enterprise by the book. The Fozzie, Waka Waka, whose unregulated culture ranges from strict conversation protocols to unvarying building designs, inhabit half of a planet discovered by the Enterprise. But after a disastrous first contact with the ruler of the Fozzie, Waka Waka, Archer must depend on Vulcan science officer T'Pol and communications specialist Ensign Hoshi Sato to help him mend relations with the people of this planet and unravel the mystery of the other creatures living on this world. Ooh, not bad. Doesn't give away too much, and actually leaves out a whole big important part of this that I was very very excited about. So now. We do have a little bit of information about this book from the lovely Book About Star Trek books. And if you're a fan of Star Trek books, then you really should have this book here. This is, of course, Voyages of the Imagination by Jeff Ayers. And this, of course, I should have realized it going in, but this is the first original Star Trek Enterprise novel. So the first Star Trek Enterprise novel was, of course, the novelization of Broken Bow, but this was they got the call to write the first one, right? And, I mean, they are a tremendous writing team. Now, I am looking at their little wiki page right now here. Just to name a few, we have got The Big Game, The Escape, The Long Night, The Rings of Tawti. Ooh, The Rings, okay. Klingon, Invasion, Day of Honor, Echoes, Captain's Table, Double Helix. Oh, they did the Captain Proton novel, too. A couple of New Earth novels, Section 31, A Hard Rain, multiple awesome Star Trek books. And I learned from a friend of mine, and not surprising at all, they also wrote D&D books as well. So I'm definitely going to look into some of those. Would love to start mixing some of that in because I am getting back into playing role-playing games with my friends as kind of the time allows. So and what is really cool about this book is that the characters, some of kind of like the lower deck characters, to pass the time on their mission and for recreation purposes, one of them has set up a role-playing game and has got some of the other people to come in, and she's doing like she's the game master and running this game. So before we get too far into that, I do want to read what Dean said here. Chris, my wife, and I were hired to do the first original Enterprise novel. All we had was a short trailer and the first 3 scripts, so we had no idea how the characters were going to act or talk. I think we got amazingly close, considering the book was done months before the first show aired. I love that. And going into it, again, I didn't even realize that it was written that well before production. And I think that it is definitely a testament to the authors and how much they got the characters. And and also just that they're very good writers, and Trek writers in particular, right? That they were able to, from those three scripts basically, to really flesh out those characters in a way that I felt was completely on track with how they are, right? And I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed like each character. Their interactions felt like the interactions from the show. I especially enjoyed kind of Archer and T'Pol's back and forth as they go through this very much botched first contact, right? That's a big part of it. And then again, the role playing game is just a very excellent kind of like B story, right? It's it's nothing that adds any tension to the story or anything like that, but it's something that just in the end actually does end up adding something to it, but really just kind of I don't know adds like an extra layer to the whole thing. So I guess, and the other good thing about this too is just that it shows, I think for me, that initial kind of that first step, and how easy it is to get things wrong, and how important it is that they did eventually establish guidelines and procedures for first contacts, and eventually the prime directive and all that, because Archer goes in a little bit impatiently, against T'Pol's kind of better judgment and her trying to tell him what to do, and it does end up being a little bit of a mistake, and things go wrong. In the end, of course, they do get there, and lessons are learned, and they are able to take something from this and move on to the next, and also kind of build upon their interactions and how they feel they're gonna be with each other. So I think that we're all worked out really perfectly. So thank you. Now, okay, so if you don't want to be spoiled, you can just step away now, because we will kind of get into it here. I had something that I was going to say earlier too, and it has flown right out of my mind. Maybe it'll come up later, but I do want to. I wanted to actually look up these characters as well here. And we got a second here while we're talking. We can do that. So anyway, again, the story starts out with them. Again, the writers are picking up from kind of like after episode 3, right? And the Enterprise is out there seeking to seek out new life, new civilizations, make contact with new worlds, that kind of stuff. So okay, I think we can save this and bring this over here in time. But so they found this planet, right? So they're going there, and they begin their initial scans of the planet. They're doing all that, and they are surprised to find, kind of what it said on the back of the cover, that this species here is absolutely crazy for order, like, and in a way that is absolutely beyond anything they've ever seen before, where every street, every building, everything is laid out in a perfect uniform pattern, right? So, I mean, they're kind of amazed by this, and they begin their study and all that, and and again, Archer, very impatient. He's like, he wants to get down there. He wants to make first contact right away. And I will say that, I mean, they have kind of examined the Fozzie's technology, and they are like, they have work capability. They've sent some probes out, that kind of stuff. So they're not like coming like way ahead of schedule. But this is again before Starfleet has established any kind of protocols or anything like that. So it's very interesting that way. That I guess it's Archer's kind of being the first to come out there and do this, right? So he has to be the one to kind of set the standard and make the mistakes, right, that are going to be made. So, and boy, yeah, they do make some mistakes. So they're in orbit, they're studying, And everyone is kind of saying, why don't we just study a little bit more? Right? Let's keep watching, keep listening, keep learning. T'Pol is saying the same thing. Let's be cautious, Captain. We would recommend, a Vulcan would study this planet for years. They would look at it for years before they even decided to send somebody down. And of course, Archer is like, well, you don't have years. Are you kidding me? There's like a million other planets out there. We got to get to them. We need to do this one, and we need to get on to the next one. And I kind of felt like that's how he was feeling too. He's like very eager. He's like, I got to get out there and keep exploring. So, against the better wishes of his crew, he does choose to make first contact, and then they get invited down, and they go down to the planet, and they completely first off, they do have an interesting first contact where they go down to the planet, they get down to like the main square, and they land, and they're greeted by absolutely no one, right? And they basically just kind of walk into the main building, and these people are extremely regimented, not only in how they build and how they do things, but also in how they speak and how they act. So, Hoshi has been trying to teach him and keep him updated on exactly what he's supposed to do, and he's listened and he's kind of learned somewhat, but again, quite impatient. So he tries to communicate with them, and it's basically like you can't speak out of turn. You have to almost like answer back in the same, like whatever they say, you answer back kind of like the same thing. Hello, we are the Fazi. Hello, we are the humans. We welcome you to the planet Fazi. Thank you from the planet Earth. Similar things to that. And they go through these general introductions, and then the Fazi just go quiet. And for the very longest time, everybody is just there silently. And Archer knows he shouldn't speak out of turn. He shouldn't say something. He needs to wait for them. And these guys are just standing there like, they're sitting there like stone-faced, not saying anything, right? But he decides he's going to say something. And as soon as he opens his mouth, these guys all stand up like they have been fully and completely insulted. They get up, they leave, they walk out. End of the first contact, right? So, again, not a very strong first contact for Captain Archer here. They return to the ship, and they plan on what they're going to do next after that, right? So, that's the main story. But the very interesting part of this book that for me, I said, I love coincidences, and it's amazing that this Enterprise book that I picked up, again, without doing research, what are these characters doing? They are playing a role-playing game, and what am I currently doing? I am also getting ready to play a role-playing game, right? And I love that. It's like a perfectly lined up thing. I can't wait to see what happens next. What's the next book I'm going to read, and how is it going to, fit into my life? It seems to be working out very well. So, but I am getting off track. They are playing a very realistic, kind of space-based tabletop role-playing game. Now, let me see here if we can't do a little bit of in-stream or in-video stuff here. I think we can. But anyway, oh Lord, why I'm losing my train of thought here again. The game itself is being led by, I think it's Lieutenant Cutler, right? And I would like to show you Lieutenant Cutler here, and I think I will here in just a moment, so that you can remember who exactly she was from Enterprise. But Lieutenant Cutler used to play role-playing games, not tabletop, but when she was a kid, she would do it back on Earth with her friends through her computers. That's Lieutenant Cutler there. Go on over here. There you go. Now, Lieutenant Cutler has decided that she thought it would be fun to start a game here with the crew, and what she has to do that is, I love this too, because of course they could only bring limited things on the ship, so she doesn't have dice or anything like that. she has to come up with a way to kind of simulate these dice, right? So she takes some of these big blocky bolts and paints half of their sides red and leaves the other sides unpainted. And then you've got this big cup, and then you roll these bolts onto the table, and if you get a certain amount of red, then you pass or fail whatever the objective is, right? The same thing as rolling a dice, basically. So it's just awesome. I mean, it's again, I wasn't surprised to find out that these authors write D&D, books, and I'm sure that they probably play role playing games themselves. As much as they put into this book, the role playing aspect of it, right? Because in the beginning, and it does kind of go off of a little bit near the end, but the beginning, it's almost like one chapter of this role playing adventure, one chapter of Archer and his first contact adventure, right? And it kind of goes back and forth between that. And the role playing adventure is very interesting. And even though it's the fake story within the story, I find myself getting into that and even laughing along with the characters, the roles, because if you've played before, you can get into that and you realize how that is. But it's Mayweather, Anderson, and I don't know if Anderson was an actual character, and then the other guy was, man, what the heck was his name? I can't say it. Novonovich? No, Novakovich. And Novakovich was the dude, if you remember, who had to be emergency beamed up and had like sticks and dirt and sands and twigs like stuck to him. I should have brought up a picture of that guy too while we were at it. Maybe I can still find one while I'm talking. We'll see how good I am and how much that distracts me. So anyway, they are all the characters in this game. And of course, at the beginning, you have to roll your character, right? So they all create their characters. And Novakovich, he calls his first character Mr. Doom. And then I think his next character is called like Dr. Mean, right? Because this guy has very, very bad luck with his rolls. And basically, the first obstacle, this guy dies and gets bitten in half by a Martian eel, right? Here we go. I think we're going to be able to do this. So anyway, here we go. They're getting into the game again, and everybody else that is there, they've not done this before. So for them, this is kind of all new. Maybe they've heard about it or whatever, but it's not nothing they've gotten into. But as the chapters go on, and then as the game goes on, they find themselves getting more and more into it. Novakovich. We got him. Boom. And then, again, the story within a story becomes more and more interesting, right? And again, it just plays back and forth between that and what's going on with everybody else, right? So let's see if we can get back to the other side of the story here, which is Second Contact. So we've talked about the Fozzie, Waka Waka, but they have detected that there is another race on this planet. And this other race is extremely different. They seem to be like a sea-dwelling race. They do have some structures on land. And they're kind of described as maybe crabs or spiders the size of cows. Like, whoa. So they're like... So it's kind of funny. They're like, okay, well, we'll focus on the Fozzie, and we're not going to try to do too much with this species right here, right now. So in their Second Contact, which is going, not too bad, here he is, Novakovich. We're going to put him down here. This is after he got beamed up, and he's got all these leaves stuck in him and stuff. Anyway. Second Contact. As soon as Archer brings up, hey, what do you guys know about the other species on the southern continent? These guys get up, turn around, walk away. Again, they're like nothing. Like, we can't even talk about this. We're out of here. That's it. It's over. So, again, very, very, very bad Second Contact. And he'd kind of been warned against this again by T'Pol. And like I said before, I love the dynamic between the two. And you can almost feel, and Vulcans don't get angry, but you can almost feel like the Vulcan seething. Like sometimes I feel like I'm a seething Vulcan sometimes. But you know what I'm talking about. You can feel that in his decisions and her logical and calm and obviously just right decisions. I mean, she's saying the right thing here, and it ends up being the right thing. So, so again, second contact doesn't do so well. They decide, all right, let's see if we can learn something about this other species. And again, I have to say, this away mission just seemed poorly planned. Okay, like what? So they send Mayweather and a couple of other folks down in a shuttle. And here's the plan: run out, get some samples, get back to the shuttle before any of these aliens come out of the water and see you. Right? Doesn't seem like a very good plan, and it's executed very poorly. I think it's Cutler's actually the one that's down there. She gets a sample of the building material, gets back to the shuttle. Oh no, the cow crab is coming out of the water, coming towards them. The other guy, I forget his name now, but he checked out the inside of a building, took some scans, took some pictures. In his leaving, he slipped in the mud. Oh boy, come on, like, dude, you can't just slip in the mud on this away mission. Like, come on. Anyway, he slipped in the mud. Now he can't make it back to the shuttle in time. He gets kind of surrounded by these creatures and starts screaming his head off. Like freaking screaming. Archer orders Mayweather to take off. He's got to do it. He takes off, and they beam up this unfortunate officer. But in the process of beaming up, they beam up one of these aliens at the same time. And Reed, who is up there in the transporter room, is terrified that the same thing has happened, that they got like melded together. Luckily, that wasn't the case. They're just both kind of close to each other. So they stun them both just so the alien doesn't do anything. And they have to sedate the screaming guy, and they sedate the alien. Oh boy, we're at 22 minutes here. We're going to have to ramp this up, I think. We don't want to go over 25, right? Anyway, they sedate, but it doesn't work. The alien ends up waking up, and two more of the crew gets, basically caught by the terror or whatever these things do to people, and get stuck into a screaming madness, right? They're able to stun this guy again, knock him out, but now they really need to figure out exactly what the heck is going on with this. So they're able to, like I said, knock him out. They move him down to a more secure location. They're definitely keeping a better eye on him this time. Like, how did he get out in the first place? Like, what is the crew of the Enterprise doing here? But they are able to, and this is where the Martian mission kind of ends up helping in the end, because they kind of take something from that. And it was actually just Novakovich who goes, and he wants to contribute. Again, he's kind of been out, recovering from all this stuff being beamed into his skin. And he comes up with the idea of a psionic barrier. So, maybe we could talk to them if we could put up some kind of barrier that's going to slow down their very intense psionic energy. And they do go into explaining how these creatures communicate with their psionic beams, and how they need to do that because specifically they're underwater. And there's a lot of detail and thought put into that, and they just did a great job with that as well. But they're able to, again, to figure out a way to create this barrier. And then also, Hoshi works with T'Pol and Trip, and they're able to work on getting a translator as well. So with these two devices, Archer makes his successful first contact with a race known as I wrote it down. It's the Hipon, Hipon. And it's kind of funny because they are like, as soon as the translator works, the Hipon is like, yeah, your translator is working amazing. We're really happy you're here. We sensed you when you came into orbit. We detected you. We've been wanting to talk to you. We're really glad that we're able to talk to you. Like they just it was just amazing. Like Archer was like thinking, "Oh man, this is gonna be trouble. Something's gonna happen here," and the guy was just like gung ho and ready to go. Right? Oh, Beta's going off in the background there apparently. But that's fine. We're gonna keep going, trying not to get distracted by the ode to Spot going off in the background. So anyway, at the end of it, they are. I got totally distracted by the ode to Spot. Shoot, he's talking to the Hippon, right? And again, one of the terrible things about these guys is they stink. They stink terribly, so it's a big problem there too. But he's putting up with it so that he can speak with them and all that. And in the end, basically, it all just works out, right? It's amazing how it all just works out perfectly, right? There really isn't a huge load of conflict in this book. It is more of a very problem-solving book, and he successfully makes first contact with the Hippon, and is then able to even go back to the Fozi and make a successful third contact with them, after finally learning a few things from the other first contacts, right? Now, the Hippon ask for the translator so that they can talk to the Fozi themselves. And in the end, Archer decides not to give that to them, deciding, not to interfere in that way, and then that they would probably develop that themselves over time. And even the Hippon are like, the human are wise with this decision. So, yeah, I thought that was good, and a very solid ending. And again, it goes back to the RPG back in the end, too, where, their mission continues, and again, that was just a very fun kind of like diversion and side story that didn't add anything like very substantive to the story. Like, right? It was just a side story where the character, the crew was blowing off some steam, right? And in the end, it kind of does help out, but it was just such a fun little like diversion. And again, I applaud the authors for their great job representing these characters even before it was out, right? Like well before it was out. Just after reading some scripts, they're able to do such an excellent job of laying all these characters out like that. So, okay, I think we lost some of the talk at the end, but we're talking for 27 minutes, so I think we're just going to call it a night, right? That's been a good one. And I have really enjoyed reading this one. And again, I was able to knock it out and read it a lot quicker than the other ones too. So it's been fun. So as always, my friends, thanks for hanging out and listening. We'll be back soon to talk about another one. Live long and prosper. And we'll see you guys in the next one. You have a good night.